The train screeched to a stop in the dusty little town of Dry Creek as the noon sun blazed. Down on the wooden platform, from one of the cars stepped a young woman clutching a small brown suitcase, her face pale but determined. Her name was Clara Whitmore, and she had come halfway across the country to marry a man she'd never met. The letter in her coat pocket was already worn from how many times she had read it. It was from a widowed cowboy named Daniel Hargrove, who had placed an ad for a mail-order bride. He lived miles out on a lonely ranch with his young son and had written in plain, careful words that he was looking for a wife who could bring warmth back into a quiet home. Clara, tired of city smoke and empty promises, had replied. Weeks later, she found herself stepping onto the wooden platform of a place she couldn't even find on most maps. As she looked around, the town was silent except for the clatter of hooves and the wind rushing across the dusty street. Men tipped their hats politely as she passed, curious about the young woman in the blue dress who looked both lost and certain. At the same time, a tall man stood waiting beside a wagon hitched to 2 brown horses. His hat shaded his eyes, but the lines on his face spoke of long days under the sun and too many quiet nights. "You must be Miss Whitmore," he said in a low, steady voice. She nodded, clutching her suitcase tighter. "Yes, I'm Clara." He nodded once, polite but distant. "I'm Daniel Hargrove. Let's get you out to the ranch. It's a long ride." The road to the ranch stretched endlessly, winding through golden plains and rocky hills. Neither spoke much. The sound of the wagon wheels and the wind filled the silence. Daniel's son, a boy of about 8, sat beside his father, glancing shyly at Clara now and then. His name was Jacob. He had his father's serious eyes but a softness that peeked through every time he looked at her. When they reached the ranch, Clara could see the loneliness in every board of the weathered house. The barn was old but sturdy, the corral empty except for one old horse. Daniel helped her down from the wagon and said, "You can rest in the front room. I'll bring in your things." His voice was kind, but there was distance, as if he were afraid to get too close. That evening, they ate supper in silence until Jacob suddenly spoke, his small voice breaking the stillness. "You look just like Hope," he said. Daniel froze, his fork halfway to his mouth. Clara blinked. "Who's Hope?" she asked softly. The boy looked at his father, then whispered, "My mama." The room went quiet again, but this time, it was heavy with memory. Daniel's face darkened, and he muttered, "Jacob." "That's enough." The boy lowered his head, ashamed. Clara said nothing more, but inside, she understood everything. She wasn't just a stranger here. She was a ghost come to life. That night, in the little guest room Daniel had prepared, Clara lay awake, listening to the distant sound of coyotes. She thought of the way Jacob had looked at her, not with fear, but with a strange kind of hope. And she thought of Daniel's eyes, filled with both longing and guilt. She had come here to start a new life, but it seemed she had walked into the shadow of another woman's memory. The wind outside rattled the shutters, and Clara whispered to herself, "I'll find a way to make this house warm again." She didn't know if Daniel Hargrove would ever let her heart touch his, but she was determined to try. Days turned into weeks, and life on the Hargrove ranch found a quiet rhythm. Clara woke before dawn to make breakfast, helped Jacob with his lessons, and tended to the small garden that had long been forgotten. Daniel worked the fields, fixing fences and caring for the few cattle that remained. Though he said little, he noticed everything. The way Clara hummed softly as she worked, the way Jacob laughed again after months of silence. She brought warmth into their lives like sunlight breaking through the clouds. Yet Daniel held himself back, haunted by the memory of his late wife, Hope. One afternoon, a storm rolled over the plains. The sky turned black, and thunder cracked so loud the windows shook. Daniel rushed to get the horses inside while Clara and Jacob gathered blankets and food. Lightning struck a tree near the barn, setting it ablaze. Without a word, Daniel ran into the fire to untie the horses. Clara screamed for him to stop, but he didn't listen. She ran after him, her dress whipping in the wind, and together they pulled the frightened animals to safety. When they stumbled out, covered in soot and rain, Daniel looked at her with eyes that finally saw her, not as Hope's ghost, but as the woman who had risked everything for his family. Later that night, after the storm had passed, They sat by the fire while Jacob slept. Daniel spoke softly, almost afraid of his own words. "Hope was everything to me," he said. "When she died, I promised myself I'd never love again. I only sent that letter because Jacob needed a mother. But you've brought life back into this place." Clara's eyes shimmered in the firelight. "And you've brought meaning back into mine," she whispered. For the first time, Daniel took her hand. Spring came, and with it, laughter filled the ranch again. Clara taught Jacob to read stories from the Bible and the old frontier tales his father loved. Daniel built a new fence, a new barn, and, slowly, a new heart. One morning, as the sun rose over the hills, he turned to Clara and said, "I asked you to come here to marry me because I needed a wife. But now, I'm asking because I love you." Clara smiled through her tears. "Then I reckon I came right on time." Jacob ran to them, laughing. "I told you she looked like hope." Daniel lifted his son into his arms. "She does, son," he said softly. "But she's her own kind of hope." And there, under the open sky, they became a family, not born from promises and letters, but from courage, forgiveness, and love that grew stronger than the past. If you enjoyed this story and wanted to hear more tales of love, loss, and redemption from the Old West, don't forget to subscribe to Old West Story, where every sunset holds a new beginning.